Hello everyone, welcome to this review of The Farewell, a film that came out in 2019 and is now on streaming platforms such as Amazon and Netflix. Basically we have a young Chinese girl living in New York who finds out that her grandmother has cancer. Now the family decide it's best not to tell her following Chinese traditions, and what happens is the family ends up arranging a wedding in China so they can all gather. So they all end up in China and they gather, and basically the film goes from there. The film is directed and written by Lulu Wang, who has done a few short films in the past and a feature in 2014 called Posthumous. The story as a whole is full of a lot of sentimental and really emotional moments, but it really warrants it, and it's done in a way that's very refreshing, and there's nothing about this that feels overly melodramatic or nothing. It's very, very subtle, and it does it in quite a real way, and in a way that you don't see very often with these kind of films that deal with such large topics. Now, when you come into the film, you think it's going to be quite a hard watch, but it's very far from it. It's actually got quite a few funny moments as well. Not in a way that makes fun of the situation, but it does make light of some things. I think one of the strongest things the film has to offer is Awkwafina's performance, and I haven't seen her work in the past, but for someone who's come from a supporting comedy actor background, very impressive performance. It's full of subtlety. You feel every moment that's there. And I think the reason the film is executed so well is because this is actually based on, as the tagline of the film says, an actual lie. That is because Lulu Wang actually experienced this in her own life with her own grandmother earlier in the decade, where her family decided not to tell her grandmother about having cancer. And it turns out she's actually still with us now. One thing I found very interesting is obviously they were filming in China, and some of the locations were actually quite close by to where Wang's grandmother lived. And the grandmother in the film is actually played by her real grandmother's little sister. Now that's just amazing, because you would not think that some of these people are non-actors, and the performance that's given is just so wholesome and real. But throughout the filming, Lily was trying to make sure that her grandmother didn't find out, and that worked for most of the film until towards the end of the shoot, where her sister must have said something. But I thought that was quite interesting that she decided to film it so close to home. As some of you may know, I'm a really big fan of Asian cinema, and I think this film does a lot to display Eastern values. Now, obviously, I understand Asia's a big place and everywhere is quite different, but in general, in the Eastern part of the world, there's a very different attitude towards death and grieving, and I think the film, it actually brings to light some things that I actually didn't know. I knew the idea that people would burn things for their loved ones, things that they liked, and it's a really big market actually in China now and Hong Kong and stuff, to the point that they're making paper iPhones and whatever, and it would be a common practice to go to the graveyard and burn these things every year or so. But I was not aware of this whole idea of not telling a person that they had cancer, because I'm pretty sure that's illegal here and in the States and in most places. So that it's something that's alarming, but at the same time it does question our Western values, and think, should we really tell people? Because I know a lot of people have mixed attitudes about these things when it comes to terminal illness and cancer and whatnot, because I think some people wouldn't like to know that their time is limited, but at the same time the other argument is it's nice to know how much time you have so you can spend it well, and I think that in itself is such an existential conundrum, and I think the film doesn't try to become this big film about death and life. It does it in a much more subtle and charming way, and I absolutely love the film, and the cinematography was gorgeous. Apparently she used films like Still Walking as an example, the cinematographer, and that's a Koreeda film, and it's quite similar in terms of dealing with death and grief and being very family oriented. But overall, The Farewell is honestly one of last year's best films, and I was really glad that I finally got around to seeing it. And I think it's definitely one that it's light-hearted, but you do walk away from it and you learn something. And I definitely recommend checking it out, guys. Well, that's it, guys. Didn't want to hold you too long. Look forward to seeing you next week when I release my Mike Lee video. I didn't want to bring it out too soon because it honestly just needed more time. It's going to be not a really long video, but there's just so much to talk about, and I want to make sure I put it the best quality I can. So thanks a lot, guys. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, have a look around if you're into film history, and I'll see you next time.